Hello everyone and welcome holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Samach Beis Amid Aleph and some of Samach Beis Amid Beis as well. We pick up in Hilchas Rosh Hashanah. We're learning the halachos of Shofar. We're in Siman Taf Kuf Pei Zayin, and we pick up today on the second line of Samach Beis Amid Aleph with Sif Beis. So yesterday we were speaking about somebody who blows shofar while in a pit, and we were discussing the different concerns that may come up as far as hearing the sound of the echo of the shofar as opposed to just hearing the shofar itself. And we discussed yesterday that from the Rishonim and the Achrayim, it seems that there are two possible problems. Maybe they're two separate problems, maybe they're two aspects of the same problem. The way the Mishnah Berurah put it in yesterday's shir, the Mishnah Berurah said in Eis Cotton Vav on Samach Aleph Amid Beis, Ve'im Kail Havara Shamu, the Mishnah Berurah said, Pirish, She'im Kail HaShofar Shamu Libasayf, Kail Havara Lo Yatzu, Sha'arei Kail Pasal Ma'urivim Kail HaShofar. What the Mishnah Berurah is telling us over here in Eis Cotton Vav is that the problem of hearing the echo is that the sound of the echo is mixed together with the sound of the shofar. So you're hearing two separate kailos, and you're hearing them mixed together. So you're hearing a kail kasher with a kail pasal. That's a problem, says the Mishnah Berurah. We learned in the Bir Halacha, we saw the words of the Taz, where the Taz also mentions that kail havara, it's a weakened sound. And what I was trying to say yesterday was, it's not just a question that the volume is low. It's also a question that the kail havara, again, it's a mixed sound. It's a sound which is weakened by virtue of the fact that it's also mixed with other sounds. The Taz spoke about a problem of richuk makayim. If you're far from where the shofar is being blown, if the shofar is being blown inside and you're outside, far away, so the Taz said that the problem is the kail havara is chalush, it's weak. And I was explaining, it could be, what the Taz means is that when you're far away, you're hearing a lot of ambient sound from the outdoors together with the shofar. It becomes a blended sound and it's a kail chalush, it's a weak sound. But in any case, these are the problems that we've been discussing. So now we go to Sif Beis on Samach Beis Amid Aleph, and says the Mechaber, Im hischil liskaya bebor. Let's say somebody was blowing shofar and he was down in a pit. So he started the tekiah, he started blowing while he was down inside the pit. And then maybe he remembered, I remember learning the Dirshu Shir, and I remember that there are complications with blowing shofar while in a pit. So, Im hischil liskaya bebor. If he started blowing the shofar while he was down in the pit, and then va'ala chutz laboyer ugemara, and then he climbed up and he went out of the pit and he finished that kail. So he's blowing a tekiah, he's blowing a long tekiah, and when he started blowing, he was in the pit. As he's blowing, he climbed up out of the pit and he finished blowing shofar when he came out of the pit. Yotzeh, the Mechaber says, you're yotzeh. Why? And this is really obvious. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to point out that this is obvious. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain why the Mechaber felt the need to say this. But the Mechaber says, Shekol Masha Shama, the reason he's yotzeh is because everything that he heard, Bein Bifnim, whether it's what he heard while he was inside the pit, Bein Bachutz, or it's what he heard when he was outside the pit, Haya Kail Shofar. It was all the sound of the shofar. Again, what case are we speaking about here? The Baal tekiah is being moitzi himself. He was down in the pit, he started blowing. While he was in the pit, so he's in the pit, and the shofar is in the pit. So that's the halachah we learned yesterday. We said tekiah b'soich habar, if somebody blows shofar while he's in a pit, oisam ha'imdim b'soich habar, the ones that are in the bar, yotzu, they're yotzeh. The shofar is in the bar, and you're in the bar. So you heard the sound of the shofar very, very clearly, without the echo. We explained yesterday that perhaps the blast of the shofar in the pit, when you're in the pit together with the shofar, even though maybe there is an echo, but the sound of the shofar very clearly overpowers the echo. So all right, so this Baal tekiah, when he blew shofar when he was in the pit, he was in the pit together with the shofar. So he heard the kol shofar very clearly, very well. He's yotzeh. Now he climbs up out of the pit. So now he's outside and the shofar is outside. So again, there's no problem. Everything he heard from beginning to end was all good. So he's yotzeh. So why did the mechaber feel the need to say this halachah? Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is cut in tes. V'ala chutz labar. After he started blowing, he climbed up out of the bar. Umayri, the Chavetz Chaim says, we're speaking here about a case, shebiyachad, at the same time, hoitzi roishai v'ha-shofar min habar. When we're saying over here that he's yotzeh, because everything that he heard from beginning to end was all kosher, we're talking about a case where his ears, his head, and the shofar came out of the bar at the same time. If that wouldn't be true, if somehow he bent himself over in a funny way so that he brought his ears and his head out of the pit, but the shofar remained in the pit, then we would have a potential problem, because now he's blowing the shofar in the pit and he's hearing it from outside the pit. Then we would have a havara problem. We would have an echo problem. So says the Chavetz Chaim, that's not the case. The case is that his head and the shofar came out of the pit at the same time. So when his head and the shofar were in the pit, he was together with the shofar in the pit. When he came out, he was together with the shofar outside the pit. And continues the Chavetz Chaim, umilsa de pshitahu deshari. And in reality, this is a davar pashut. What the mechaber told me here, there's no chiddush involved in what the mechaber told me. So why is the mechaber saying it? He explains the Chavetz Chaim, Elo de kamash balon, the chiddush over here is that you might have thought that there's a reason to make a gzeira and to say that this is no good, even though technically it should be good, but maybe there's a reason to make a gzeira and say that he's not yotzeh. Why? Kamash malon, deloi chayshinon lemigzar. We don't concern ourselves and make a gzeira to say that this is not allowed. Dilma apik reishe me al lebar, because maybe if we're going to say that you could do such a thing, that you could blow the shofar while you're in the bar and then come out, so then what might happen is somebody will bring his head out, va'akati shofar babar, the tekiah, and he'll leave the shofar sticking down into the bar and blow. And that tekiah would be a problem, because then, like we explained, the shofar is inside and he's outside. Ve'efsher bazel lishmaya kol havara. And if you do that, you're going to hear the echo. Now, the Chavetz Chaim is not being mechadish this. This is really a shakel of Atari in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis, where there's a mimer of either Ravas or Rabbas, depending on the girsa that you have in the Gemara over there in Chav Ches Amud Beis. They either Rava or Rabba. I think in the Berurah they bring it down over here in the name of Rava, Memra de Rava Sham. Rava says over there exactly this case. Somebody was down in a bar blowing shofar, and then he came up out of the bar with the shofar while he was still blowing the shofar, and Rava says he's yotzeh. And the Gemara goes to try and understand exactly what case was Rava speaking about. And in the end, the Gemara concludes that this is the case. He's blowing for himself. And first he was in the bar, and while he was blowing, he climbed out from the bar. Frek the Gemara, if that's Rava's case, Maila Memra. What's the point of Rava to say this halachah? It seems to be a davar pashut. And the Gemara over there explains that no, it's not a davar pashut, because you might have thought that there's room to make a gzeira. We're going to say that this person is not yotzeh because we're afraid another person is going to see, oh, you could start blowing while you're in the pit and then climb out. So another person is going to do it, but when he does it, he's going to keep the shofar in the bar after his head comes out of the bar. He's going to stay that way, and now he's going to have an echo problem because the shofar is inside and he's outside. Kamash malon, that we don't make that gzeira. Now continues the Chavetz Chaim, u'b'hoitzi ha-shofar tchila. Let's say the other way. Let's say the person was in the bar and he brought the shofar out from above the banks of the bar, v'roishai adayin babar, but his head is still in the bar. So now the shofar is outside and he's inside. V'tekiah, and now he blows. Im chayshinon bazel lekoil havara. Is there a concern for echo when the shofar is outside and you're inside? That's a case that we didn't discuss until this moment. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Tolui bepluktas ha-poiskim. This is a matter of dispute amongst the poiskim. Im michutz libifnim nishma koil havara. Is there a problematic echo when the shofar is being blown outside and you're located inside? Says the Chavetz Chaim, that's a matter of dispute. V'yispar b'Mishnah Berurah l'kamei, and it's going to be discussed in the very next ois katan of the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Yud. Now let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. So we had the Mechaber. Now says the Ramah, v'chein oisam shahoyu babar b'tchilas ha-tekiah. The case of the Mechaber was that the Baal tekiah was blowing for himself. Now comes along the Ramah, and the Ramah says the same halacha applies to the people who are together with the Baal tekiah, listening to the Baal tekiah blow shofar. Let's say the Baal tekiah and all of the people that are being yotzeh with him, they're all in the bar. And the Baal tekiah starts to blow the shofar, and he's blowing a long tekiah, and then suddenly, in the middle of the tekiah, everybody together climbs up out of the bar, and they go out of the bar. Says the Ramah, the same halacha that the Mechaber said about the Baal tekiah himself also applies to anybody who's with him, who starts out in the bar and goes out of the bar together with the Baal tekiah. The same halacha is true. Everything that they heard is also kosher from beginning to end. Because at the beginning they were together with the Baal tekiah in the bar, and then in the end they're outside of the bar together with the Baal tekiah. So says the Ramah, the same halacha applies to them. Now we have an interesting Mishnah Berurah. Says the Chavetz Chaim in Ois Katan Yud, v'chein oisam shahayu babar. Pirush, the explanation of this Ramah is va'olu gam kein biyachad im ha-tekiah. We're talking about people who are with the Baal tekiah, and they started out in the bar with the Baal tekiah, and they climbed up out of the bar at the same time as the Baal tekiah. V'shamu gemar ha-tekiah bachutz, and they heard the end of the tekiah while they were outside of the bar. Says the Chavetz Chaim, yotzeh yedei chayvasam, they are yotzeh the mitzvah of shofar, gam kein mitam hanal, for the same reason that we explained that the Baal tekiah is yotzeh the mitzvah, because everything that they heard is kosher. When they heard inside the bar, they were in the bar and the shofar was in the bar. When they climbed out of the bar, they were out of the bar and the shofar was out of the bar. So there's no havara issue. Shekol ma sheshamu hayu kol shofar, because everything that they heard was a kosher or kol shofar. So they're yotzeh. Says the Chavetz Chaim further, v'yesh makilim bazeh, there are those that are mekel in this case, and I believe this is a bach, v'yesh makilim bazeh, there are some that are mekel, afilu lo yotzu klal, even if they never left the bar. Rak shamu gemara tekiah shetaka bachutz bihi yoisam babar. The Bach is mekel, and he says, let's say at the beginning of the tekiah, everybody was down inside the bar. He started blowing, so far so good. The shofar is in the bar, the people are in the bar. Now the Baal tekiah climbed up out of the bar. Now the shofar is out of the bar, and the people are inside the bar. The Bach says that that's not a problem. This is exactly what the Mishnah Berurah was alluding to in the previous Ois Katan, in Ois Katan Tes. Here we have the question, is there a concern of a problematic echo when the shofar is outside and the people are inside? So says the Chavetz Chaim here that the Bach is mekel. V'loi chayshinon l'koil havara. According to the Bach, we're not concerned about the sound of the echo if the shofar is outside and the people are inside. From outside to inside, there is no problematic koil havara. The dafka mi bifnim lachutz nishma koil havara. Because the problem of koil havara is only when the shofar is inside and the people are outside, not vice versa. That's the opinion of the Bach. Avaloi mi bachutz lifnim. Ulamaisa, halacha lamaisa, says the Chavetz Chaim, yesh lahachmir b'shaloi yotzu. He brings down from the Matei Ephraim that we should be machmir. In the case where shalo yotzu, if the people listening to the shofar did not climb out of the bar together with the tekiah, then halachah l'maisa, says the Chavetz Chaim, we should be machmir. What does it mean to be machmir? Liskaya shenis b'li bracha, to blow over again, but without a bracha. Im einoi bar lahem shekal shofar shamu, if they're not sure that they heard the shofar clearly, and they're concerned that it's possible they heard a kol havara, they should hear shofar over again, but it should be without a bracha. Says the Chavetz Chaim weiter, HaTorah shehichnis shofar labar v'taka. If the Baal tekiah stuck the shofar into the bar and he blew the shofar, v'hu ba'atzmai oimed kulay mibachutz, and he is standing entirely outside. So the shofar is in the bar, but this person, his body, his head, he's totally outside. Just the shofar is stuck down into the bar. Ha'imdim babar, this is a very interesting case. Ha'imdim babar, the people that are in the bar, yotzu b'tekiyasai, they're yotzeh, because why shouldn't they be yotzeh? They're in the bar, and the shofar is in the bar, so they're yotzeh. V'hu atzmai la yotzeh, but the Baal tekiah himself is not yotzeh. Why? Because the shofar is in the bar, and he's outside of the bar, so there's a havara problem. Unless he says that he could discern and he's certain that he heard the shofar clearly. That's the halacha yesterday. That's always the halacha. If the shofar is being blown inside and you're outside, where there's a potential kol havara problem, if you're certain that you heard the shofar clearly, then you're yotzeh. So very interesting over here. You got what's going on here? You have the Baal tekiah himself. He's blowing shofar. He wants to be yotzeh the mitzvah, and he wants to be mitzi other people. He sticks the shofar down into the bar, and the other people who are listening to the shofar are in the bar. They're yotzeh with his shofar blowing, because they're in the bar, and the shofar is in the bar. But he's outside of the bar, and the shofar is in the bar. So unless he's certain that he heard the shofar clearly, and it wasn't mixed together with the kol havara, he's not yotzeh. So you have a person who's blowing shofar to be mitzi acherim, and they are yotzeh, but he himself is not yotzeh. So there's a very interesting sharat tzion over here. Sharat tzion ois katan yud ches. The Chavetz Chaim over here points out, you might say to yourself, hey, wait a second, how could this happen? How could it be that the person who's actually doing the blowing is being mitzi other people, but he himself is not yotzeh? How could that be? Says the Sharat Tzion, he brings down from the Pri Megadim, U'Mesayim to become makom mechuyev b'davar mikri lahitzi acherim. In order to be mitzi somebody else in a mitzvah, you have to be a bar chiyuva in that mitzvah. That mitzvah has to apply to you. So this person is a bar chiyuva. He needs to be b'kayim the mitzvah of shofar. Now, with this shofar blowing, he wasn't yotzeh, because the shofar was in the pit, he was outside, he heard a kol havara mixed together with the kol kosher. But he's a bar chiyuva, so he can be mitzi other people. Now we go to Siv Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Hashomeya miktsas tekiah shaloi b'chiv. Somebody heard part of a tekiah, but it wasn't a tekiah that was capable of not just that you can't be yotzeh the mitzvah with it. It was not a bar chiyuva. It wasn't a shofar blowing of chiyuv. And what does that mean? Let's go right away to the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Yud Aleph. Shaloi b'chiyuv kegoin koydem amod hashachar uked lakaman b'siman taf kuf pekes sif aleph. Later on in the next siman, in siman taf kuf pekes, we're going to see that the mitzvah of shofar begins with dawn. It begins with amud hashachar. That's when you could start being yotzeh the mitzvah. Now, what happens if somebody picked up a shofar and he started blowing in it before dawn? So now is not the time to be yotzeh the mitzvah of shofar. So this shofar blowing is not a shofar blowing of chiyuva. There's no obligation to blow the shofar now. There's no obligation to be yotzeh the mitzvah now. So let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. Hashemeya miktsas tekiah shaloi b'chiv. Somebody heard part of a tekiah which was not of chiyuv. Umiktsasa b'chiv. But then it became dawn. So a person's blowing a long koil. He's blowing a long tekiah. He started the tekiah before dawn. So the beginning of the tekiah was not a tekiah of chiyuv. Then he continued blowing straight through dawn. So now the back end of this tekiah is a tekiah of chiyuv. Could you be yotzeh that way? If you listen to this one koil, so you heard part of the koil after dawn, after Amud HaShachar. So you heard part of the koil during the time that you could be yotzeh the mitzvah. But the beginning of the koil started before dawn, when you cannot yet be yotzeh the mitzvah. Could you be yotzeh the mitzvah that way? Another case, says the Mechaber. Or, for example, another case where the beginning of the tekiah is problematic and the end of the tekiah is okay. What's that case? There was somebody who was fooling around with a shofar. So he's blowing the shofar not to be moitzi anybody in the mitzvah. He's not blowing it to be moitzi himself in the mitzvah either. He's fooling around with a shofar. Maybe he's practicing. Or maybe he wants to play Yankee Doodle Dandy on a shofar. But he did not start blowing the shofar in order to be moitzi anybody in the mitzvah. But now, you need to be mekayim the mitzvah shofar. You aren't able to go to shul Rosh Hashanah morning. Now it's Rosh Hashanah, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You find somebody fooling around with a shofar. He's in the middle of a tekiah. You walk over to him and you say, oh, you're blowing shofar, be moitzi me. So he continues to blow. So it's a continuation of the original koil. But when he started blowing, he wasn't doing it for the mitzvah. Now that you asked him, could you be moitzi me in the mitzvah? Now he's continuing to blow l'shem mitzvah. Let's see it inside. Another case. Somebody said to somebody who was blowing as a misasek. A misasek means he was just busy fooling around with the shofar, but he wasn't doing it for mitzvah purposes. And somebody said to him, oh, you're blowing shofar? Kavein, you should have kavana, lahoitzieni yedei chayvasi, to be moitzi me, my chiyuv of shofar, v'taka, so the guy keeps on blowing, umashach ba shir tekiah, and he blows the full shear of a tekiah, lo yotzeh. So again, what are these two cases over here? In the first case, the person started blowing shofar before dawn. He continues to blow the same koil. He continues the koil through dawn, and after dawn, he blows long enough that you have a sheer tekiah after dawn. Or in the second case, he started blowing b'misasek. He started blowing to practice. Then you said to him, oh, be moitzi me. So now he continues to blow, having kavanah to be moitzi you, having kavanah l'shem mitzvah, and on the back end, he continues to blow long enough that you do have a sheer tekiah. Still in all, says the Mechaber, and the basis of this is a Torah, and I think he brings it from the Rush, lo yotzeh, you're not yotzeh. So very interesting. We're going to have to explain this. You heard a sheer tekiah l'shem mitzvah, and you heard a sheer tekiah after dawn. But since the beginning of that tekiah was either before dawn or it was not l'shem mitzvah, depending on the two cases of the Mechaber, you're not yotzeh, even though you heard the whole back end of that tekiah, which was after dawn and l'shem mitzvah. You're still not yotzeh. This is the sheet of the Torah. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah over here. Ois cotton yud beis. B'misasek. What does it mean that somebody was blowing b'misasek? Lehislami. He was blowing to practice. Oil l'shem shir b'alma. Or just to blow notes on a shofar. He was blowing Yankee Doodle Dandy. The lo yotzeh, and you can't be yotzeh the mitzvah with that kind of blowing. In order to be yotzeh the mitzvah, the person has to be blowing after dawn. He can't be blowing for practice purposes. He has to be blowing l'shem mitzvah. Ukid l'kaman Siman Tavkuf Peites Sivches. We're going to see that later on in Siman Tavkuf Peites. Ois cut yud gimel v'taka umashach, and the tekiah kept on blowing, so that he was blowing after dawn, or he was blowing l'shem mitzvah. Ritzayna loymar, what the Mechaber wants to say when he says v'taka umashach, he means shehe'erich tekiyasai b'shviloi. He lengthened the koil in order to be moitzi this other person. He's cutting you out. Lo yotzeh. He's not yotzeh. Why is he not yotzeh? Says the Chavetz Chaim. Shaharei al kol panim chasa loy haschalas hatekiah. Because you did not get the beginning of the tekiah. You need a complete koil. it's not just that you need a coil of a minimum length. You need a complete coil. And over here you did not have a complete coil. The beginning of the coil was before dawn. Or the beginning of the coil was lihislamed. It was for practice. It wasn't for mitzvah. So it's true that you heard the back end, but you only heard part of a tekiah. You didn't hear the entire tekiah. You're not yotzeh. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, and he says a very interesting chiddush over here. And he brings this down, Pri Chodesh, the Mati Yehuda, Pri Megadim in the name of the Taz. He says like this, V'hu hadin, the same halachah would apply, V'hu hadin nami, im kol ha-tekiah hayu b'chiyuv. Let's say the person was blowing after dawn. He started the coil after dawn. Or it was a regular Baal tekiah who was blowing l'shem mitzvah. The whole time he was blowing after dawn, he was blowing l'shem mitzvah. Ella, but the problem is on the listener's end. Ella shehu nichnas be'emtza tekiah. Somebody came late to Shofar. So he walked in middle, and the Baal tekiah was already in middle of blowing that first tekiah. And he blew a long tekiah. So I heard enough of a tekiah that I heard a shared tekiah, but I only heard part of his tekiah. I walked into the shul after he already started blowing. Or says the Chavetz Chaim, sheyotzeh mi beis hakneses be'emtza tekiah v'shov lo shama. Or you walked out in middle of the tekiah. So you heard a shear of a tekiah, and then after you heard the shear, you figured your potter. You walked out while it was still blowing. Says the Chavetz Chaim, loy yotzeh. You're not yotzeh. Afal pi shahal yashir tekiah b'masha shama. Even though you heard the minimum length of a tekiah, you heard the sheer tekiah, and it was l'shem mitzvah, and it was after dawn, you're still not yotzeh. U'cheman d'shama chatzi sheer tekiah dami. And it's as if you did not hear the necessary shear of a tekiah. According to this shita, apparently the Torah holds over here that it's not enough to hear a sheer tekiah. You have to hear the complete coil. If you didn't hear the complete coil, you're not yotzeh. You need to hear the complete coil. However, continues the Mechaber, and the Mechaber says, V'yesh omrim, there are those that say, and I believe this is a Ramban, V'yesh omrim, there are those that say, Sheyotzeh i'ika shir tekiah b'chiyuv. That if the part of the tekiah that you heard was long enough, and it was b'chiyuv, so if the Baal tekiah started blowing before dawn, but you heard after dawn the minimum length of a tekiah, or he started blowing lihislamed for practice, but then he continued blowing, and you asked him to do it l'shem mitzvah, and you heard the shir tekiah l'shem mitzvah, so then the Ramban holds that you are yotzeh. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Tezva V'yesh omrim the yotzeh Usvara Rishayna Iker. And this first opinion, the Machberdik opinion that says that you're not yotzeh, that's the Iker. V'tzarech lachzor v'liskaya, and you would have to blow over again. V'afal pikein, however, lo yavarech alav, you should not make a bracha on that second shofar blowing. The suffix brachas lahakil, because the rule is that suffix brachas lahakil, we go l'kula when there's a suffix bracha, which means that we don't make the bracha. And the best thing would be somebody who was not yet yotzeh in the mitzvah should make the bracha and should be moitzi you in the bracha. So this is very interesting. So this halachah, I think a lot of people would think if they walked into shul in middle of the tekiah and it was a long tekiah, they would think to themselves, all right, I heard a sheer tekiah, what's the problem? But no, the problem is you didn't hear a full coil. I guess if you only heard part of the coil, that's not hearing a coil shofar. The coil is the entirety of the coil. You have to hear the whole thing. You didn't hear the whole thing. Okay. Says the Ramon, Samach Beis Amid Beis. For who adin, the same halacha would apply. Im shama miktsas hatekiah koil havara. Let's say we go back to the problem of the beginning of this year. Let's say part of the tekiah you heard mixed together with an echo, and then the rest of it you didn't. Let's say the tekiah was blowing inside the shul, and you are outside the shul. And you say to yourself, oh, I'm not hearing this clearly. I hear the echo. So I remember learning in the Dirshashir, I'm not yotzeh if I'm hearing the echo. I better run inside. So he runs into the shul in the middle of the tekiah, and he hears the rest of the tekiah without a koil havara. And it was long. It was a long tekiah. So he heard the minimum share tekiah. That's the same machlokes would apply. According to the first shita, you're not yotzeh. According to the second shita, you are yotzeh. So again, v'hu adin, the same halacha would apply. If part of the tekiah you heard an echo, like the case with about tekiah is blowing in the bar and you're standing outside. His case is a little different. Not that you went inside, the Baal tekiah came outside. So the beginning of the koil, the Baal tekiah was in the pit, and you standing outside heard the koil of the shofar combined with the koil havara. And then in the middle of the koil, the Baal tekiah walked outside. So the rest of the koil you heard perfectly fine. That's the same question. According to the first shita, you're not yotzeh, because you have to hear the entire koil in an oifen of chiyuv. And according to the second opinion, you would be yotzeh. Says the Mishnah is cut in Tezayin. Uve'emtza tekiah yotzeh lechutz. Ritzayin loymar. What the Ramah means to say is who went outside in the middle of the koil. Ritzayin loymar HaTorah. The Baal tekiah came out of the shul, came out of the pit, and went outside in the middle of his shofar blowing. V'hishlima al svas habor. And he completed the koil outside the bar. V'nimtza, so it comes out, sheha'im de bachutz, the people standing outside, shamu rak seif hatekiah. The only part of the tekiah that they heard that was a koil kosher was the back end of the tekiah when the Baal tekiah came outside. The beginning of the tekiah, the Baal tekiah was inside and they were outside and they heard the koil havara. The palgakama, the first half of the koil, haisa tekiah psula. That was a tekiah that was puzzle because the shofar was inside and they were outside. And if you had a shear of a tekiah while you were already standing outside, tali b'shnei dayas hanal. Right. Ube'emtza tekiah, yeah. V'hu adin, the same halacha would apply. Im shama b'tchila kol shofar, kigoyin shaya im hatekiah bebar. The same shiloh, the same halacha would apply if at first the people who are listening were together with the Baal tekiah in the pit. Uve'emtza tekiah yotzeh lechutz. And then in the middle, he went outside. In this case, the first half of the koil was good because the person was inside with the Baal tekiah, and then he walked outside. So now the Baal tekiah was inside and he was outside. That's no good. Because you need the koil of the shofar. The entire koil has to be kosher from beginning to end. The kasra akraidim, the akraidim right, the yizaru kala This is a very, very, very negea dika halacha. You know, some of these halachas that we've been hearing so far, people will say to themselves, oh, come on, is this really negea? Blowing shofar in a pit, etc., etc. So first of all, we found out last year with COVID how negea certain halachas that we thought aren't negea are negea, right? When we had people davening in backyards, socially distant from each other, or different houses or porches combining with minyanim, we found out that all sorts of halachas that we thought were never negea were suddenly negea. So some of the halachas that we've been learning, they didn't sound so negea, but what the Mishnah Berurah is going to say now is very negea. The kasva akraidim, the akraidim right, the yizaru kala amishalol lahitzi kicham v'niyam b'shas tekiah. People should be very careful not to cough and expectorate during the shofar blowing, so that you, as well as the people around you, should be able to hear the entire koil of the shofar from beginning to end. And similarly, la yavinu yaldayim etzlam. Don't bring little kids. The gam ken mitamzeh, because they're going to come and they're going to make noise. Certainly, if you do bring young children, they should go with the women to the Ezes Nashim. The Nashim einon mechuyavos min adin b'tekiah shofar, because women really make her adin do not have a chiyuv of tekiah shofar at all. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, it seems to him that young children that are already higiu lechinuch, mitzvah lahaviyam, it's a mitzvah to bring them ulachzikam etzlai, and to hold them by you. Don't let them just wander around shul. V'ya'ayam aleim, and you should warn them and put a little fear into them. Sheyishmu at-tekiyos, that they should listen to the tekiyos. V'lo yivalbalu lahatzibur, and they should not confuse the tzibur during their davening or their shofar blowing. However, the caveat to this halacha that I always say is, don't use this as an excuse, chas v'chalila, to embarrass people in shul. How many times does it happen? Somebody comes into shul and people feel that they're making too much noise, and you get the shushers. Shh! They make a whole big deal, or they yell at a woman who brought their little kids to shul for shofar blowing. Don't yell at people. Don't embarrass people. Let's remember, kol mavaza as chaver barabim ein lo chelik l'olam haba. So it's not something to play with. All right. Achenu kol beis Yisrael anusudim batzara be'ashiv yom demeim be'ayom be'ayom be'abasha. Hamakim erachem aleim v'yitzim mitzal l'racha me'afel la'ur b'shib l'gula hashta ba'golo v'zman kariv. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. The schus of limud HaTorah should protect all of those people in Eretz Yisrael. The missiles should fall on empty fields if they're shot at all. They shouldn't be shot. Better yet, they should fall on the heads of the ones who launched them. The Rebbe Hashem should protect everyone. The Rebbe Hashem should send Yeshua's, Refuas, and Parnasa to all those in need. We should be Zoicha to the Bias Goyel Tzedek B'Behera V'Yameinu, to the Bidyan Beis HaMikdash. We should be brought back to our Yerushalayim Ir Kochenu, to Eretz Yisrael, with no more tzaras. Be well.